Hey everyone, welcome back to another class picking guide. The goal of these videos is a quick overview of the playstyle of each class rather than a comprehensive class guide. For this video in this new series, we'll be looking at the Imperial Commander class, or IC for short, an archer specialization which turns into Imperial General when you complete your third job. Imperial Commander plays like a completely different class to Expert Archer. It becomes a lethal cursing class with poisons, dots, stat reduction abilities, and a life drain. I plan to give all classes a rating out of 5 for their difficulty to play in PvE and in PvP. This is strictly in comparison to each other. I'm not saying they're easy or hard compared to other games, and it's of course my opinion. So in PvE I've given IC 1 out of 5, and in PvP 5 out of 5. That means I think it's extremely easy in PvE and among the hardest to play in PvP. So first, let's talk about that 1 out of 5 rating in PvE. The reason I've given it such a low rating to play in PvE is simply because the class is very basic when it comes to general PvE. You're going to rely heavily on life absorption to do most of your damage. You might throw in blow up arrow if you feel like it, but you do get that life absorption health back. It's a very powerful ability. We'll talk about it in a little bit. On top of that, you also get mana circulation, a passive which allows you to regenerate mana, and in a server that's going to either restrict mana meds a lot or have no mana meds, that's very important. So that's why IC gets a 1 out of 5. I'll talk about later how it can kind of change when you get higher level, but typically waiting for a 6-second cooldown, you have that kind of sustain. It's pretty straightforward. Now, I've given the class a 5 out of 5 in PvP, and the reason for that is just because the class has such a huge array of skills to work with in its toolkit. It uses a lot of them in PvP, especially in 1v1s to be most optimal, but also there's that level of, and I'll talk about this later, is the fact that in a 1v2 or a 1v3, actually, you can still restrict your enemies enough to outplay them. And that's something that the class really comes alive on, and you can find a lot of like pretty standard basic IC players, but the skill ceiling is very high and you can really tell the difference when someone really knows what they're doing. So that's why it gets a 5 out of 5. A lot of skills to use. You're going to be swapping between your hotbars a lot, usually about 3 towards the end of 70. So yeah, it's a very difficult class, I think, to master, but you know, you can kind of get a basic skill floor, but to master is very different. So as already mentioned in the PvE, the core ability for Imperial Commander is Life Absorption. This skill has 3 grades, the first of which comes at level 50, and then the last at level 66. It deals damage, but also recovers HP to your character, starting with 60% of the damage you've dealt, but by the time you have grade 3, it provides 100% of your damage dealt back in health. IC has a wide array of abilities designed to cripple your enemies' offense and defense. You can cripple mobility, you can poison them, you can reduce their stats, you can blind them, you can remove their buffs and drain their mana and more. Most of your abilities you won't need in PvE. As I mentioned, in PvE, its difficulty score, you know, is low for a reason. You'll largely rely on life absorption, or well, LA for short, as it is a proper damage skill, so it's useful for that. It gives you that sustain too, and because it's OTP based, meaning it's accuracy based, you can actually hit monsters higher level than you, which is typical for a physical attack or grinding. Your curses, however, work differently. They're level based, which means they won't really work great in grinding, because monsters that are similar level to you are the yellow named ones, and they're much less XP. So you don't usually grind those. Maybe mages do a little bit early on. So yeah, for higher level mobs, you're not going to curse them too much. But that is great against players. Your curses basically don't miss against players. There are a few mechanics that allow them to avoid them, but I won't get into that. So interestingly, IC and ultimately IG actually become very tanky as a class. Part of this is due to the sustain from LA, but also because you can greatly limit your enemies attacking you, especially through loss of confidence that cripples anyone's but mages, ability to hit you, sight blockade, which completely blocks enemy vision from all characters, preventing them from even carrying out any attacks. Your other curses can also be useful to limit attacks, such as Curse of Strength, Curse of Agility, etc. But also the vast array of tools you have to slow your enemy's movement as well is hugely important. Choosing to play IC will provide you with a cozy PvE grind, albeit generally a slower one, with life absorption and your mana circulation passive providing excellent sustain. Once you unlock Poison Cloud, you might be able to come up with a few more unique grinding methods, but this is especially true with grade 2 Poison Cloud, which is actually really powerful in PvE as well. And since this is a correct server in terms of the skills work correctly, it won't be a storm like some people seem to be used to. You can kind of use that to AoE grind somewhat even before you hit your third job. Once you do get Arrow Explosion at 70 and third job change, you can already farm quite a lot provided that your evasion is high enough. A quick word on third job gameplay aside from what I've just mentioned. IG gets Arrow Explosion at level 70, but really comes online in PvE when it locks Virulent Arrow at level 75. Both are big AoEs. Virulent Arrow actually is like a poison AoE, not like Poison Cloud. What it does is it hits an arrow out that does damage, but also spreads poison. Then that poison, massive, I mean, forget Poison Cloud, the damage reduction is huge from Virulent Arrow on each tick of damage. For PvP, we'll have to see how the team at Bengo decide to balance the third job skills in PvP, as they're rarely available in modern private servers in PvP. That's because of their power. IG also gets Shrewdness, a passive which increases your percent of your overall evasion, which is why, as I mentioned earlier, IG can be so tanky, especially in PvE. Choosing IC in PvP, your experience will be very strong in 1v1, but in group fights you might feel somewhat ineffective, especially Castle War, at least until you're an IG. That being said, IC is one of the highest skill ceilings in the game, like I mentioned earlier, and if you're after a challenging class to PvP with, this might be the one for you. That wraps that up. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you plan to play IC, and I'll see you in the next video.